23 years ago, at about past midday, a thunderous explosion rocked Manhattan City in New York. The basement of the World Trade Center, then United States of America and world's tallest building, was the epicenter of the blasts. A truck bomb was detonated below the building's north tower, and according to investigations, a 606-kilogram urea nitrate and hydrogen gas-enhanced device was used. According to America's mighty Federal Bureau of Investigations, FBI, the crafters of the attack intended to bring down both towers of the building and to kill tens of thousands of people. But it failed, and only 6 people were killed, although more than 1,000 were injured. Following instincts of terrorism, the FBI investigative team zeroed in on a group of terrorists including Ramzi Yusuf, Mahmoud Abu Halima, Mohamed Salameh, Nidal Ayad, Rahman Yassin, and Ahmed Ajaj. They were the masterminds of the attacks, with chief financier Sheikh Khaled Mohammed. In March 1994, 4 were convicted, and the charges were conspiracy, explosive destruction of property, and interstate transportation of explosives. In November 1994, 2 more were convicted: Ramzi Yusuf, the brain behind the bombings, and Ayadi Isboy, who drove the truck carrying the bomb. With these convictions, one would think that all was done, but the manhunt was just at its genesis and not about to stop. In fact, it was the beginning of a long hunt in the war against terror by the United States. The continued hunt saw many more tagged to this attack, and this is how Dr. Bilal Awib Phillips' name finds itself on America's blacklist. The US government named him as an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 bombings and has placed him on America's no-fly list. Born in Jamaica, although Canadian, Bilal Phillips calls himself a Muslim teacher, speaker, and he is an author. He considers himself an ultra-conservative reformist, advocating for a traditional literal form of Islam. I meet Dr. Bilal Phillips on his trip to Uganda, where he is scheduled to address a public lecture on distant learning through activities of his own founded Islamic online university. Working closely with a corporate Muslim group, and despite the various security chains, Phillips has been able to make it to Uganda. I put it to him on how he came to be blacklisted on a terrorist list.
Well, one of the people who ended up being jailed for the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. We're not talking about 2001 now, please, okay? It's 1993, right? That's 23 years ago. This individual was known to me. I knew him because I was involved in the Bosnian campaign to help the Bosnians who were being slaughtered back in 92, 91 by the Serbs, etc. I came across him, I met with him. I guess he was under surveillance, so they have pictures, of him, maybe meeting me, whatever, in a masjid. So by association, this is what co-conspirator means. It's likely, we think, because of the fact that you are in these locations where he was, that you are probably in on the same plan he was. We don't have the evidence, but this is what we think. And I should just mention, whilst you're talking about it, that a lot of people forget that Nelson Mandela was also put on the same blacklist, okay?
He was removed after he died.
No, it actually was before he died, but he was removed from the list. President of South Africa, he was removed when he was given the Nobel Peace Prize for the same thing for which he had been put on the blacklist. So out of embarrassment, he was then removed from the blacklist. So we know what America's blacklist means. There are so many examples. You know, how many people ended up in Guantanamo and they were let out of Guantanamo with no charges after spending 10 years, 15 years. So you ask me, didn't you challenge it? I wanted to. In fact, one of my students, former students, was a lawyer, immigration lawyer there. I asked him, I contacted him and said, you know, what can we do to deal with this? You know, because I don't like to be on any kind of a list. It was, at that time, it was just like a co-conspirator list. This was back in 95 when a list had come out. Mary Jo White's list come out. So I said, I'd like to get this thing cleared. He said, well, okay, you need to come. And when you come, be prepared to be arrested. I mean, I'll be there. We'll inform the authorities. So when you come in the country, they'll likely hold you and we can fight it from there. I didn't like the idea of going into an American jail and having to fight my way out of there. That was just not something I was prepared to do.
Meanwhile, he has earned himself security fences in countries, including Australia, where he was blocked from entry on the advice of the national security agencies. In 2010, he was banned from entering the United Kingdom by Home Secretary Theresa May for holding extremist views. In April 2011, Phillips was banned from re-entering Germany as persona non grata, while in 2012, neighboring Kenya banned him from entering the country over possible terror links. June 2014, the Bangladesh Intelligence Service also ordered Phillips, who had gone to Dhaka to give lectures, to leave the country. September 2014, Phillips was arrested in the Philippines for inciting and recruiting people to conduct terrorist activities. He was also questioned on his possible links with terror groups including the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, ISIS.
You know, I become a target, an easy target. And if we look at the various cases, Australia you mentioned, I had been going to Australia back and forth before that, right? When they didn't allow me in the country, they explained they wouldn't allow me in the country. They said, why? Because he's on the American blacklist. So it had nothing to do with anything I ever said or did in Australia. So all we can say is that this is Australia under American thumb. They're just following their, you know, their master's bidding. Okay, that's one. Just very recently, in both Ghana, Ghana and Nigeria. In Ghana, the American embassy, and this is known to the circles, the circles there in Ghana, the media circles, the American embassy leaked to the newspapers that when I was coming in to the country, invited officially by the main body of Muslims in Ghana, and my visas approved, everything else. I'm in the country. I've given lectures in Accra. I've given lectures in Kasumu. I've gone now to Tamale to give the lecture. All of a sudden, you are not allowed to give any public lectures. Why? Because the American embassy has leaked information to the press, and it's all in the press, that I am likely to radicalize the youth. This is the accusation. Fortunately, alhamdulillah, African, at least West African authorities stood up. They didn't just bow to it. And the head of intelligence in Ghana made an open statement, put it up on his website. Bilal Phillips is not a threat to Ghanaian security.
The ISIS has become one of the most fierce, powerful fighting groups in the world. Thousands of Arab and foreign fighters make up its ranks, and to just have your name tagged to the group is enough to have you in trouble. The group now controls parts of northern and eastern Syria, including oil fields. Despite the suspicion of him having links to the group, Dr. Bilal has no kind words for the ISIS.
Islam prohibits the unleashing of violence against civilian populations. War on the battlefield is another situation. Here again is where the Quran gets falsely accused. the verse which says, فَاقْتُلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمُوهُم. Kill them wherever you find them. They say, look at this book. It's saying to kill the disbelievers wherever you find them. Of course, in the beginning, the verse before that says, if they attack you on the battlefield, then kill them wherever you find them. Okay? So the context changes the meaning of the statement so radically. So this issue of violence, for political causes and ends, which involves violence specifically against civilian populations, Islam condemns it in no uncertain terms.
But Bilal's entry into Uganda while in neighboring Kenya he was banned raises more questions than answers on Uganda's intelligence vigilance. I meet David Waswa, Uganda's Chief Technical Officer for Counter-Terrorism and Assistant Commissioner of Police. My interest is to inquest the knowledge of the anti-terror security about the profile of Dr. Bilal, a man listed on various country bans.
We as security got that information. We tried to do our underground check, the background check, and we shared it with the other agencies, with both here and abroad, and we try to study. The person you are talking of is under surveillance and has been under surveillance at different levels.
But Waswa's response suggests that Dr. Bilal was not listed on the Interpol list in Uganda, and therefore little was known about him.
Once someone goes on an Interpol list, whether Interpol issues a red notice or yellow, whatever it is, then automatically, as a subscribing country, we have to comply the same. But there are other people who are shortlisted, either by a state or by an agency, which doesn't necessarily become binding to another state. So there are different levels of doing it.
So Bilal could have been maybe...
There was no Interpol notice so far as yet or concerning his travels.
To confirm this, I make a call to the head of Interpol, Mr. Hassan Kasinje, and his response about Dr. Bilal is enough to understand that little was indeed known about Dr. Bilal by Uganda's security.
No, I've not checked. The truth is, I have not checked.
But Waswa cites the porous borders of Uganda, mostly manned by immigration officials, as quick entry points for wrong people.
Our borders are very porous. Much as we talk of the PICES system, it is only in designated, border points, not everywhere. And these people, can always pass anywhere. We have had several who have been warned, but we end up, having them here.
So, could Dr. Bilal have taken advantage of security's ignorance about his high-risk personality that he managed to make entry into Uganda?
People come in with the different intentions. They can come in as students when it is a bigger plan. We know very well that terrorists are very, very patient. It doesn't take them, much to take 1 to 3, 4 years in order to work for a single attack. Now, these are all become challenges to us. But the most important thing is for us to keep, knowing, to keep empowering our people with this knowledge, the knowledge of the changing dynamics, so that we can be able to keep, revolving our systems with the revolving threat.
On his visit in Uganda, Dr. Bilal was welcomed at the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council, the main headquarters of the Muslim community found at Old Kampala. Here at Gaddafi Mosque, he led Juma prayers, but also had an opportunity to speak about Islam, his passion.
Indeed, this ummah, this nation, this ummah here, this nation is one Muslim nation.
I asked the spokesperson of the institution, Alhaj Nsereko Sebuliba, on his knowledge about the high-risk profile of their visitor, but he did not know.
No, we had no idea. But first of all, for us, we are religious people. We don't have any department of intelligence within our system, so really we don't know. And secondly, how would we have known if at all he was cleared to come here?
He questions why a high-risk profile person would be allowed in the country where security agencies are meant to vet visitors.
Can really terrorists be allowed in Uganda here without being checked or without being arrested? Sorry, we don't know anything about that.
As for Dr. Bilal, he denies allegations that he promotes extremist views. He says the US authorities' attempts at muzzling him can only create a vacuum filled by violent radical recruiters. The controversial preacher insists his banning syndicate from a host of countries will not deter him from reaching thousands of followers through online courses.
So I don't need to be going to, if countries don't want me in there, I have no problem. You know, Africa, alhamdulillah, has opened its arms to me, and there is a lot of work being done because my focus is really not about lecturing. My focus is education. I'm an educator. I'm the chancellor of one of the largest Islamic universities in the world.
While threat and tragedy cannot be entirely controlled, much intelligence vigilance can go a long way in limiting damage. As for Dr. Bilal, perhaps the Uganda security could have known better or had a sniff. I'm Moses Walgembe, NBS Investigates.